I played the Division 2 beta over the weekend, and in this video I want to give some of my thoughts on what I think of it so far. I won't be addressing glitches and bugs that I found within the game too much, simply because I know the developers are actively working to fix those issues. What I want to talk about is some of the game mechanics and changes from Division 1, and those things that were implemented intentionally and may not get changed. The world looks great, albeit some of the hair look like Brillo pads and the character skins might need a little bit of tweaking, but overall the world looks beautiful. It's not quite as dark and gloomy as the first game, which kind of sucks, but overall the world does look great. Also, the guns feel great. I love that they have recoil that you have to control, but not too much recoil, and they have a good sound too. Now there was a glitch in which gunshots would simply not create a sound, or sometimes a reload animation would happen, but there wouldn't be a sound to it. But when it was working, the gun sounded great. So in Division 2, you have armor instead of health. Well, you have armor and health. However, you can't regenerate health through any ability. It just auto regenerates. But on top of the health, you have armor, and this armor takes damage and depreciates, and then you repair it. So essentially, repairing your armor takes the place of healing. And I like that they have this armor over the health, because it creates opportunities that some unique skills, perks, or status effects could take advantage of, like poison. Poison was something that was in the hints of the Division 2 beta, but I never actually saw it within the game. And it says that when you get poisoned, the poison does damage directly to your health, ignoring the armor. I also like that this game has a much faster time to kill than Division 1. Now I know that a lot of people complained that the enemies in Division 1 were extremely spongy. I didn't see a huge issue with it. Maybe they were a little bit too spongy, but I think that's just part of the gameplay and something that's kind of fun to do. Some people complained that they didn't like it specifically because it was a lazy way of making the enemies harder. Instead of balancing them out, you just give them more health, and I can understand that, but I didn't think it was too big of an issue. However, in Division 2, it is they're much less spongy. When I was reading through the forums for the feedback on the beta, there was a lot of people still complaining that they're too spongy. However, I don't think so. I think when it comes to RPG shooters and realistic shooters, there's a line. Once you get to a certain point, you're going to have to start giving up some realism for the RPG aspect, or some RPG aspects for the realism. And actually, I think Ghost Recon Wildlands is just about perfect medium of that, in the sense that you've got about equal components of realism and equal components of RPG. And in fact, maybe not even centered. I think it's a little bit more on the realism side. So while Wildlands is fun, it's not the same game as Division. So if you start making the game more realistic by taking away the spongy enemies, or mildly spongy enemies, you're going to have to take away some of the fantasy, sci-fi, and RPG aspects of the game that make Division what it is. So I think right now it's fine as it is. I think the less spongy enemies actually work better than the enemies in Division 1. So it's certainly better this way. However, I don't think they should be made any less spongy. I think the time to kill is just about perfect. As a side note, this actually affects you too. You die much faster, so you're forced to use cover even more than within the last game, and it opens up potential for support classes and tanking classes to be even more prominent, but I'll discuss more of that in a minute. Another thing that I liked was that Division 2 left the number crunching aspect of the game in place and didn't dumb it down to appeal to more casual gamers just to boost sales, like so many other franchises have. World of Warcraft. Anyway, number crunching is one of my favorite aspects of Division, and that's something I really liked. And they, like I said, they didn't dumb it down and get rid of that and make it simpler, just so more casual gamers would like it and they would sell more copies. So I'm really glad that they did that. That was one of my biggest fears. But anyway, that kind of wraps up what I liked about the game. There were some other aspects I can go into bigger detail with, but I want to talk more about what I didn't like. First and foremost, the weapon mods. So in Division 1, you had both weapon mods and armor mods, and essentially they were just some attachment that you put on your weapon or your armor, and it offered you additional stats. The problem with the weapon mods, armor stats, or the armor mods, I didn't get a whole lot of experience with. I did when I played the in-game version of the beta a little bit, but I didn't mess with them too much. But they seem to be pretty much normal. Again, I didn't look at them a whole lot because I was so focused on the weapon mods. And what they did is now each weapon mod has a positive stat and a negative stat. So for example, you might get something, and this is an actual example of one I found. Like, it was a grip, and it increased accuracy, or it was grip, or it was a grip or a scope, I don't remember. But it increased accuracy by plus 15%. But it hurt my stability by minus 10%. And let's just say I hate that. The choice to have both positive and negative stats on them is like simply counterproductive. Division is a looter shooter, which means grinding for the best gear, weapons, armor, and mods, so that you can go out there and kill tougher enemies. And then the reward for defeating those tougher enemies is even better gear. So when you finally get a weapon and a mod as a drop, assuming you can get a mod as a drop, every time I got it, it was from as a perk, or I crafted it, but again, more on that in a second. So again, I haven't actually seen one drop yet, but I'm going to assume they're still available as a loot. Anyway, so when you finally get that weapon mod as a drop or in some other way, it sort of robs the player of the reward for their effort feeling when they see that negative stat is not worth the positive stat, which most of the time that's the case. So I feel that the point of the weapon mod should be to improve the player's weapon, but with the current mechanic, weapon mods don't do that. They don't make weapons better, they just make them different. Another example is a plus 15% accuracy and a minus 10% critical damage. I've seen that a couple of times, and when you have that stat, it isn't improving the weapon, it's only trading one stat for another. While I prefer that the negative stats be removed altogether, if they must, and I mean absolutely must stay, I think the negative stat should be drastically reduced. For example, instead of having plus 15% accuracy and minus 10% crit damage, maybe I have plus 15% accuracy and minus 2 or minus 3% crit damage. And if there's only one thing that changes between the beta and the full game, I hope it's this. I really don't like this, because the positive and negative stat, again, is simply counterproductive, particularly with some of the stats that are on there. Get back to the first example of plus 15% accuracy, minus 10% stability. Stability and accuracy pretty much go hand in hand. So accuracy refers to simply whether or not you're, or what I guess the chance that your bullet is going to go where you're aiming. Stability refers to recoil. So if I'm improving my accuracy, I'm increasing the chances that my bullet's going to go directly where I'm pointing it. However, I'm doing that at a loss of stability, meaning I have more recoil. So my bullet's more likely to go where I'm pointing it, but it's harder to actually point my weapon where I want it. So in the end, my overall accuracy and my overall chances of hitting my opponent haven't really changed too much. Maybe slightly, because the increase in accuracy is slightly higher than decrease in stability, but it's still an issue. I saw several other ones where you have like a plus 15% crit chance and minus 15% crit damage. And so again, it's kind of counterproductive. So I have a higher chance of getting a crit, but now when I do it, I'm going to do less damage. Now, I understand the whole concept of trade-off one stat for another, but this should be done by choosing one mod or one piece of gear over another. So maybe I have the grip that increases my critical hit chance by 15%, but I have another one that increases my critical hit damage by 15%. I have to choose which mod I want. That's fine, but having to both putting a positive stat on there and a negative stat from one attachment is just counterproductive. And so this gets back into another point I really want to make, and that is one of the things I loved about Division, aside from the number crunching, is the ability to pursue multiple different statistics at once. So I'm not forced to just focus on critical chance or critical damage or accuracy or stability or any of those things. I can pursue multiple different statistics, simply because the mods and the weapons and the gear and all the bonuses give you a large enough percentage increase to make a difference. A lot of games, I suppose, to be on the safe side, end up giving you these increases at 2, 3, 5% increments. Division isn't afraid to be like, yeah, here's 10%, here's 15%. And so I like that, because I can throw a couple of mods or attachments on my rifle that are critical at chance, and then throw a couple more critical at damage. And I've increased, both by 20-25%. The problem is, with other games, when you have like a plus 2, 3, 5%, if you throw a couple of mods on it for critical hit chance and a critical hit damage at 2 or 3% each, you're never really getting anywhere in either category, just minor differences. Certainly nothing noticeable or game-changing. So if you really want to have something that's noticeable and can alter your playstyle or something to build a playstyle around, you have to put all of your mods or attachments or whatever that game has towards that same statistic to get anywhere with it. But since the bonuses and the stat increases are so high in Division, you don't have to have 10 perks or 10 attachments or 10 enchantments, whatever the game is, to get that extra noticeable increase towards that stat. You can put 2 or 3 here and then 2 or 3 at another stat. So again, you can pursue those multiple different statistics at once. So you can really, what I call stat stacking, which is to pursue 2 different stats or 3 that work really well together. So as an example, in Division 1, for a while, I didn't do this the entire game, but for a while I ran SMG and marksman rifle, like everybody else. But the 3 statistics I pursued were critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and headshot damage. And I did this because, at least in the beginning of the game, the SMGs had an inherent increased critical hit chance. Later game, after they kind of nerfed them a little bit, it was critical hit damage, but still critical hit. Marksman rifles had an inherent increase in headshot damage. So you can get critical hits on top of headshots. So headshots just did inherently more damage. Plus, if you got a crit in a headshot, it did even more damage. So I stacked those, and then I would aim for the head. So my SMG would get tons of crits, and I'd get a little bit of extra bonus damage because of the headshot. And if I was using my marksman rifle, I'd have a less chance to get a critical hit, but I'd getting a lot of damage per headshot. And if I got a crit, it was a lot of damage. So I got to use these 2 or 3 different statistics that all work together, and I can pursue those. So back to the negative and positive stats on the mods. The problem with this is, even though they still have the high percentage increases in there with like your 10s and 15s and percent and whatnot, you can't pursue multiple stats because, well, one attachment, maybe you're pursuing critical hit damage and critical hit chance. So you put on a mod for critical hit chance, but it decreases critical hit damage. So now you have to put on another mod that's maybe, let's say your first mod is 15% crit chance minus 10% crit damage. So you find another mod that's plus 15% crit damage minus 10% accuracy. So you've gained, in accuracy, or not accuracy, in crit chance you've gained 15%, but you hurt yourself in 10% crit damage. Then you had to throw on another mod for crit damage and to counteract that, and you got like 5%. So it makes it much harder to pursue multiple different statistics. Anyway, I've kind of worn out this topic, but this is a big pet peeve of mine, something I really don't like. But I'm going to move on to the next thing. Actually, I lied. There's one more thing I want to mention about the weapon mods that I don't like. And it's that when you get a weapon mod, in Division 1, when you got it, you would simply take the weapon mod and attach it. So if you got a scope, you got a scope. But if you had another weapon you wanted to put a scope on, you had to go find another scope. In this game, once you have a mod, you have it, and you can attach it to any, well, not any weapon. There are certain limitations. But you can attach it to any number of weapons at one time. So, for example, let's say you're running assault rifle and shotgun. You can find a grip you like, or let's say a scope, because you can even put a sniper scope on a shotgun in Division 2. But anyway, let's say you find the scope you really like, and it increases optimal range. So you throw it on your assault rifle because you want to be able to reach out there a little bit farther, and you're like, well, one of the big negatives of a shotgun is simply range, so I can put the scope on here too. In Division 1, you would have been like, okay, well, I want to find another scope that has optimal range or something. But in Division 2, you don't have to. You're like, well, I already have it, even though it's attached to a different weapon. Let's throw it on. Let's throw it on the shotgun. I do like that the weapon attachments don't actually go into your inventory, because the problem with it in Division 1 is it hurt inventory management. Because I might find these weapon mods I don't need on my current build, but I might like if I did another build, so I'd throw them all in my stash, and it would take up tons of room. And then if I found a weapon, I might be like, I don't know if this is any good. I mean, right now, comparing it to my current weapon, it's bad because I'm comparing it a base weapon to a weapon with mods, and even if I take it off, I'm like, okay, so they're about even base weapon to base weapon, but I don't know what mods I have that I could put on it to potentially make it better. So by having them not in your inventory and they just store in kind of this separate unlimited inventory, that's kind of nice. Actually, I like that. It's about the only new mechanic for the weapon mods that I like, is that they don't sit in your inventory, that you have them on you at all times so you can attach them as you need. But I don't like that once you have it, you can attach it to as many weapons as you want, because that takes away the need for a choice to make that decision of, do I want to put this, which do I want optimal range on more? Do I want it on my rifle or do I want it on my shotgun? And so if the idea of having the positive and negative stat was simply to have players make that choice of is the good worth the bad, why not make that choice instead of is the good worth the bad? Do I want it on this weapon or my other weapon? But anyway, now I'm gonna leave this topic alone. Now I've mentioned perks a couple of times and I kept saying I would get to it, so I personally feel that there need to be more perks in the game, and that those perks that are there need to be much more creative. Perhaps there will be more by the time players reach endgame, because there are specializations, and specializations unlock certain mods for their skills and potentially more perks, but I can't say for sure. But right now, from what I've seen, there are far too few, and they're simply not that creative. In fact, I wouldn't even say they're truly perks. Some of the perks in the game allow you just to simply unlock an attachment. There are 3 or 4 of these, and they each have like 3 different levels. So one, you purchase this perk and it gives you a grip. You purchase level 2 and it gives you a different grip. Purchase level 3 and it gives you another grip. And it does this also for magazines and scopes. So, and I think there's another one. There's at least 3, maybe even 4 of these perks out of maybe 12, 15 total perks. So that, I mean, when you're going to have so few perks to begin with, but then 3 of them aren't even really perks, they just give you an attachment, that creates limited builds. I'd like to see some perks come back from Division 1 that were really good, like that one perk that gave you a 50% chance for a bullet striking the head, or a bullet that was a headshot, to be put directly back into the player's magazine. This was really good for shotgun builds, since each shotgun fired 8 pellets, and if even one of those 8 pellets hit the head, and got that 50% chance, it would be put back. So I mean, if you shot somebody in the head and let's say 5 of the 8 pellets hit them in the head, you're almost guaranteed to get that shell back. So it was kind of a really good counter to the limited ammo capacity that shotguns had. But perks like that and other just creative perks. A new one maybe they could implement that goes along with the whole armor over health is maybe have a certain perk that makes it so that headshots have a insert percentage chance, whatever, to ignore armor and deal damage directly to the health. I feel that perks should break established norms within the game. That makes them more creative and allows for more unique classes to be built around those perks. As it is, there's just nothing really unique, and there's just simply not very many of them. And this goes on to the skill types too. There actually seemed to be a fair amount of skills. I think there were 9, maybe 10 in the game, but in the beta we only got access to 3. However, in those 3, the mods were kind of, well, they're quite similar, and they weren't really anything particularly unique. So we got access to the drone, the turret, and the seeker mine. And a lot of people actually complain that the seeker mine and the drones have to be targeted, saying it's kind of clunky, and it was a bit clunky, but it wasn't horrible. One of the mods for the drone was you set a point A and a point B, and then it flies over and drops bombs between those points. The problem with that is I think it was too slow, and there were several points in which I'd select point A and then it wouldn't let me select point B, so my drone would just fly around above me and not do anything, waiting for me to select that point B, but I couldn't. So I think like for something like that, make the bomb a little bit bigger, have a bigger radius, and just select one point to drop the bomb. But anyway, the other mod for that was to make it so it just flies around and shoots somebody, or have it follow you around and repair your armor. With the seeker drone, you had one where it just rolled over to it and blew up, another one where it rolled over to it and blew up and then had cluster bombs, and then another one where it rolled around behind you and healed you. So again, other than the explosions, it's very similar to the drone in the sense that, well, I mean, even the drone and the seeker mine with rolling over and exploding it, so basically each of them are bomb, plus they each have one that heals. The only difference is is the drone has one that shoots, which is extremely similar to the turret, in which it just sits there and shoots. So they're very similar to each other. Now there are some specializations that change things a little bit. Like one specialization gives a mod for the drone that it can, like, basically it does a recon pulse kind of thing, where it basically identifies and sees enemies through walls and stuff. So that's really unique, and that's neat. But I'd like to see more of those kind of mods. And that takes me to my next point about the class types. Is so far all the perks we've seen, what select few there are, and all of the skills and skill mods seem to lean really heavily towards DPS class types. Sure, DPS is an important class, but so is tanking and support. Now, I acknowledge that this could just seem this way due to the limited style of the beta, again, because we only got a couple of the skills, but I certainly hope that there are more tank and support class related skills and perks within the full game. And as I mentioned earlier, the faster time to kill actually creates a larger role for classes such as tanking and supporting, since enemies are players are gonna take damage faster. It creates a larger requirement and more usefulness out of the healing abilities of the support class. And since your DPS can't just tank hits, you're gonna want a tank or a class that's built around tanking a little bit more. So I think there's a huge opportunity for that with the faster time to kill, and I really hope they take advantage of that. Okay, so this video is getting quite long, so there's just two more quick points I want to mention. The last thing I really want to mention in the category of what I don't like is that I can't seem to figure out how the special ammo works. Personally, I liked how it worked in Division 1. You picked up some, it'd go into an inventory and you just activate it whenever you wanted it. However, when I picked some up in Division 2, I couldn't find an inventory for it, I couldn't find anywhere to activate it. Other times I'd be shooting and enemies would just be getting shocked or catching on fire or something like that. And so I began to think that maybe once I picked it up, it auto-activated. But after playing a while, I would notice I'd pick some ammo up and then shoot somebody, and it wouldn't have that effect. So I'd pick up and say, I picked up shock ammo, and I'd be shooting people, and it would be just traditional bullets. It wouldn't be shocking them. It wouldn't be doing anything. And then other times after I haven't seen myself pick anything up, I'll be shooting people, and they'd be getting shocked. So I'm not really sure how that works. And the final thing I want to talk about is goes back to the number crunching. I love the number crunching aspect of Division. And one of the stats that they gave you in Division 2, or correction, in Division 1, was the damage mitigation percent. So you could go under some of your stats and look, and it would show you, based on your armor, how much bullet damage you're mitigating. And I think it ended up maxing at like 60%, maybe it might have been 50, and I think they changed it later to 60%, or from 60 to 65, or something like that. So again, I love that we're given all these stats on our gear. However, that stat isn't there. And again, it was really nice to know when it was really nice to have that stat, because then I could look at it and know when my damage mitigation has maxed out. So at a certain point, and once your damage mitigation has maxed out, extra armor doesn't mean anything. So if I'm looking at, maybe I get a new holster, for example, and this holster has a bonus on it that says plus 10% rifle damage, but let's say it has 63 armor less than my current one. I'm like, okay, well, I want the additional rifle damage, but is it worth losing the 63 armor? So what I can do is I can be like, well, I can look at damage mitigation percent stat and say, hey, I'm maxed out. And then I can be like, okay, since I'm maxed out in my damage mitigation anyway, this extra 63 armor doesn't really make a difference. So in that case, the 10% rifle damage is worth it. Or maybe I could just take that armor off and be like, okay, what's it look like when I have 63 armor less? And if I find out that 63 armor accounts for 1.5% damage mitigation, I'm probably going to take the 10% rifle damage over that 63 armor. So it's a really useful stat, and I really hope they put it back into this game at some point. But anyway, this is pretty much all I've got on the Division. Well, okay, it's not all I have on Division 2 beta. I've got a whole another paper here I haven't even gotten to, but it's mostly glitches and bugs and just some trivial points I wanted to mention, like enemies can kind of spam some of their abilities too fast, and some of the ways the scope zoom I don't like, and the enemy AI can spawn from every direction. Just relatively minor stuff like that. I think it's kind of just a balancing thing I think they might fix. I'm hoping they'll fix. But I've covered the major points. Again, this videos are getting quite long, so I don't want to go too much longer with it. I tried posting all of this into the feedback forums. However, Ubisoft's forums being what they are, it wouldn't let me. Every time I clicked submit or post, it would load the page, take me back to the top of the page, and nothing would happen. And I searched it multiple times, and it wasn't actually posting it. And I tried posting it as a comment on somebody else's thread, and it wouldn't work. So I would leave a link to it if it would let me post, but I can't. But anyway, I think I've rambled on enough, taken up enough of your time. Thank you for watching.
Everyone just wanted to help out. We were guarding the supply depot. Countless vaults concealed the contaminated dead, and the containers filled with DC-62. I was lucky. I can't say the same for most of my friends.
Initiate area scan.